Hello YouTube viewers, welcome to my channel Science to Technology. In today's show, Camera Tuesday, we're gonna talk about Sony BURANO. So let's dive deep into it. So what is this puppy? Well, this puppy is a stopgap solution, meaning Sony has a low-end cinema lineup, which is FX series, meaning for budget photographer, documentary and all that. And then they have flagship, this is Venus 1 and Venus 2. So they needed something to fill in the blank space between them, meaning for $10,000 you can get a very good FX series camera. For $50,000 you can get a Venus 2. So you need something in between. So this puppy is in between, $25,000. So what are they offering? They are offering full frame camera, so that's good, and up to 8K of raw recording. Let that be very clear. Sony does not allow you to do raw recording easily in FX series. In most of them you have to do HDMI capture or things of that nature, or have to have body raw file recording. Basically it's a true cinema camera, so you can act as such. Because generally they will give you 10-bit, and that same 10-bit is limited to FX and all that. So if you want to go above that, you have to go into either Venus lineup or this puppy. And the core design philosophy of this camera is made for run and gun type of shoot. The cinema camera, many of those cinema cameras have a lot of complications into them, and the reason is they're assuming there will be people working with the cameraman. You could have one person pulling focus, you could have one person managing the gimbals, you could have one person who is like taking care of the technicals of it. So camera design for that focuses a bit differently on their body. This is designed for run and gun, meaning one person may be doing everything. So it's designed philosophy is like that. That's why it does not have hundreds and thousands of ports. It's designed for different. And in Indian price it should be around 21 lakh rupees. An expensive kind of car. So this is what we are talking about. So what about the specs? Now, digital specs in this sort of price range does not make a difference. This is one of the best Sony can offer. But it has cooling fan, which is a necessary for cinema camera and video camera for long duration. This has it, meaning you can be in desert and this camera can still keep on working. That is a very desirable thing, especially for Indians. We do live in a hot environment. And it has dual base ISO. Now be mindful, that's not a new technology. In consumer electronics, always been there. In cinema, not so much. In cinema, they're like, dude, we're gonna give you one and it's gonna be perfect, and you're gonna organize everything just to fit in that one. So if like, hey, it's a little bit dim, you will add more light, you will not change the ISO on the camera. So having dual base ISO is not as common and as obvious as it is in normal lineup. In cinema lineup, it's still rare. So having ISO 3200 and ISO 800, meaning there are two physical electron paths. One is for let's say daytime shooting, another is for nighttime shooting. That's how you can get a best the sensor can do. So it has the first cinema camera that has the ability to claim it has IBIS, which, mind you, many times people do not want IBIS, especially for video camera, is because they are assuming they're going to put it into gimbals and things of that nature. The moment you put it, those IBIS could become a backfiring headache for you. It would backfire. It will, like two bodies that are trying to compensate for each other, outcome would be really lame. So IBIS is not desirable, especially if you want to put a lot of things in gimbal. It's not that it can't work, it's just like people prefer just give me hard body, I'm gonna buy a gimbal externally anyway. But this camera is more focused for handheld use, run and gun type scenario. In that case, shut up, take money for IBIS. It has electronic variable ND. Now, how do we achieve ND in cinema grade? Well, you generally have a big ass lens and even big ass matte box, and then you put a plate of ND. That gives you the best quality out there, no discussion about it, flat out the best. But it's a hell of a hassle if you have to change it, and ludicrously hell of a hassle if you are changing it regularly, meaning you could be going from in and out, in and out. Yeah, in those sort of scenarios, it's very difficult to do. Having variable ND is a very good way of doing it. You can try a circular polarizer, but it's not as good as a electronic variable ND. Why? It's just basically LCD layer. LCD is transparent. The crystal becomes either transparent or opaque based on the electrical signal. So you have a lot of minute range. So variable ND for run and gun type of scenario, and where you do not have the luxury of adding light or removing light, you will be like, shut up, take money. So this is from FX. Venice do not have this, but FX has it, high-end series of FX. So they're like, hey, let's give it here. So all things considered, all it is a camera that is more built like a consumer end, but has the performance of a cinema RAW system. Sony's autofocus, that's there is. Like, Sony is one of the companies that figured out autofocus from sensor itself very early on. Why other company took time? For example, Canon and Nikon, they had a independent sensor using the mirror. It had an independent sensor that was doing autofocus. So it took them time to understand. Now Sony jumped into mirrorless almost 8 years before any other company. So they autofocus is one of the best. It has that. Now be mindful, autofocus does not even exist in cinema camera, and many red camera do have autofocus in principle, but it's not as good as face detect, and let alone even if they had the hardware, does not have as much polish as Sony or Canon. And the reason Canon can do it, because Canon jumped also very early in a technology known as dual pixel autofocus. So autofocus is still very rare in cinema lineup, but for many people who are doing run and gun, they're like, dude, I need it. I cannot have focus puller all the time. And many times if they have that camera and they have to shoot, they may just reduce the aperture, so give them some more wiggle room. So variable ND is a very good option. Sony's autofocus in a cinema camera, that's very awesome. Now what about pixel resolution? Well, full frame, meaning if you're like, give me the full sensor, that is 8.6K 16:9, only 30 fps. Let that be very clear. It is a 8K camera, but it will not give you 8K 60 fps. It will only give you 8K up to 30. Now for cinema, it's not that big of an issue, given the fact most of them are either shot in 30 or 24. So that's there. If you drop it to 6K resolution, you can go to 16:9 and 60 fps. And if you're like, hey, I want even more fast, you can crop it down and drop it to Super 35 cropped sensor. At that point, it would be 4K 17:9 up to 120 fps. So in terms of resolution, it's GG. In terms of file, it is GG. In terms of FPS, it's not very good. Especially if you're coming from a red camera series, reds generally have much higher speed. So speed wise, it's a bit lightweight. Now, is that an issue? Not really, because if they're assuming you're buying something this expensive, you're gonna have an independent pipeline for high speed. You cannot interject. Like, high speed is one of those things. There is a reason why Phantom as a company exists. So they're like, they're not even trying it. They're not even trying, oh, we're gonna give you 120 fps in 8K. Yeah, no. They're just like, we're gonna give you the best megapixel resolution wise, like a fidelity wise, and that's it. If you need high speed, you're gonna most likely have a other high speed rig for this. So specs wise, that's the unique point of it, having all the consumer features in a cinema lineup. Now let's talk the most painful part for photographers, media and RAW, meaning what memory format you. Venice is great and all that, but it has same problem as RE. RE has its own proprietary format. This Sony cameras, especially the flagship ones, generally have AXSM card format. Now these cards are expensive AF, meaning it will make server hard drives look cheap. That's how expensive those are, and very small also. And because no other company uses it, there is no free competition in that, so prices are stupid. However, in this time, somebody was very wise. They are like, hey, let's use dual media for redundant recording, which again, Red is the only company that I Red and RE in some models where they're like, no, we're never going to give you, redundant recording. You have to rely on one card. It's like, no, that's stupid. That's why no server, nothing on this planet that is that system critical, as they say, relies on one point of failure. It has dual. That's really good, which you can never count on. Like many times, many camera companies are like, no, our card never fails. It's like, there is no media ever made that can achieve that. That's why you have two. So two CFast Express Type B. Now thankfully it's Type B. They let go of that need to put Type A. And I'm really upset that Sony is the one who built that format. That's the sad part. If you knew XQD format, that's what it is. Physically, it's electronically compatible also, because Sony gave this protocol as an open source protocol to Compact Flash Association, because they had tried to make a SATA based system. It did not work. They needed a new format. So Sony gave them that. And Sony is not using it. That's the sad part. It's like they build this format, physical pin out, physical everything. And then they're like, yeah, we're not going to use it. We're going to create a new Type A. Thankfully, Type B is used by every other manufacturer. You have a Nikon, you have Canon, you have Panasonic, you have Fuji. So benefit of that is there is a lot of companies that are releasing it, meaning SanDisk is releasing it, Lexa releasing it, Angelbird is releasing it. Many other brands are also releasing it. And it's very cheap, like exponentially cheaper than AXSM. Somebody was in comments commenting about this camera. It's like, you made everybody who bought a Venice camera so angry by using this. So, but I think I understand why Sony did it. Sony, if they're like, hey, if you can afford Venice, you can afford Hululu. If you can't afford Venice and you are buying this, you are not as loaded in your wallet as, Sony would think. So they're like, yeah, we have to use a format that is far more pocket friendly. On top of that, they are not locking it. They are very clear. You must use VPG 400 at least. Now, same way in SD card, we have V30, meaning no matter what you are doing, your card will never drop below 30 Mbps, capital Bps. So you can keep writing video frames into it and it will not drop frames. V60 is there. I'm using V60 right now. It's not needed, like for V60 is like 4K, but I just have it. And then you have V90, which is the highest you can go for SD card. Then you have CFast Express. Now CFast Express is so new, it did not have that sort of stamp, but because it was designed to be NVMe SSD on a, like that looks like an SD card, this standard was created. VPG. VPG is independent, meaning it's a certification. So Lexar can also get it, and you can see they're gonna have the stamp. SanDisk can get it, they're gonna have the stamp. Same thing. If you see this clapboard with 400, that's a symbol that this puppies have been tested to work reliably, no matter how much full it is, no matter how hot it is. If it's working, it should give you 400 Mbps of write speed. Now you may be a bit confused. It's like, aren't they have like super high write speed? Like for example, even a normal Sony card has like 1750 Mbps, as in like 1.7 Gbps. The verification is that no matter what scenario, no matter what happens, you will never drop below it. It's like baseline. So it's kind of required, because it's very easy to make a SD card that is that fast, or memory card that is that fast. It's very difficult to make it sustained speed. You can check that in same PC hardware where you have NVMe SSD. When it's fully empty, super fast speed. The moment it starts to fill up, it slows down. Why? Because cache is no longer able to catch it up. So that's why this verification is so important. So it's a really good solution, and really good as in the fact that they're using open standard. I'm very happy with that. And what about the raw format? In they're using the current generation of XOCN formats, which is extended tonal range original camera negative, meaning if you want to have this and you may desire it to be mastered by other places. For example, you may want to mastering from Dolby Vision, you may want mastering for IMAX, you may want mastering for that. You may need to send raw files to those companies who are gonna master it for you. Again, even if you have VFX added onto it, if they know the raw, they can fine tune it perfectly. So you need that raw. Raw is unfortunately is not a locked format. There is no such thing as .raw. So every company makes their own. This is Sony's current lineup. It does give you very small file. If you had like Sony's old camera that has Sony RAW as a video format, this is much smaller than that, and it has 16-bit of tonal range, meaning you do not have to worry about it. Basically, we used to have 8-bit. If this camera still has 8-bit, you went from 8-bit to 10-bit. Whoa, 10 to 12-bit, you reached cinema. Anything above 12, like again, digitally data is there. It's just that our eyes reach a point where we cannot tell the difference. So 16-bit, more than good enough, and it's using material exchange format, so it's actually compatible with lot of application. So media wise, I'm genuinely happy that thankfully dual cards were awesome, non-proprietary BS, and ask flat out in the manual says like use VPG 400, then we can certify it. That's really good, and they're gonna release their own series of card for that. So for whom this sort of puppy is made? Well, it's for those people who need very high quality source. While it's kind of easy and like, oh, I want raw, it's like, do you really freaking need raw files? So it's one of those things. 8-bit, yeah, 8-bit is not good enough. 10-bit, more than good enough. Be mindful, a lot of FX series that is used in news gathering, that has been used for TV shows, has been used for even low budget movies. They're still 10-bit only. 10-bit is more than good enough, especially if you are making sure that you are capturing the right things. So you must need a scenario where it's like, dude, I want raw files to be as high quality as possible. In those scenarios, it makes sense. Otherwise, FX9 is more than good enough. It has autofocus, IBUS, and variable ND. If your workload requires it and you need raw file, there are very few camera that has that sort of option inbuilt in one chassis. So it's for those sort of people. Like this soldering, very small compact soldering, and it also has card redundancy where people are like, dude, just shut up, take money. So movies can use this, documentary can use this, over-the-air web series can use this. So it's really sorted. Now, high-speed shooting is not needed. You must understand this is really kind of last gen in terms of FPS, but they are assuming, Sony's people are assuming if you are buying this sort of cinema grade lineup, you have a high-speed requirement, then you're gonna buy a dedicated high-speed system or rent it. So it does make sense. Like if you see movie like 300, they had different cameras to get that slow motion. They did not use one camera. They had beam splitters for that. So same thing happens here. They know that if you need something like this caliber, no amount of Kajri will give you, high speed out of this. You need a dedicated system for that. So for those sort of people who are like, hey, I'm doing running, I do not need the highest speed, but I do need high quality raw files. Whatever your requirement, it's up to you. If you need that, you're like, shut up, take money. You want like, hey, I want raw file, I want basically IBUS, I want autofocus, all that in one body. Again, it's a desirable thing. So this was my presentation on Sony's latest camera release for FX bigger brother and Venice's younger brother. Hopefully you have liked it, learned from it. In that case, please click the like button, share it amongst your friends. That will help me a lot. If you didn't like it, didn't enjoy it, I urge you to press dislike, press it twice to show me extra disappointment. Please leave a comment because I do try to reply to all of them. Subscribe, press the bell icon if you're free, and as always, thanks for watching.